I am a child of the internet. I was raised on social media, YouTube in particular. Instead of following movie stars and TV stars, I grew up watching YouTubers, who very quickly became the very first generation of digital celebrities. I got my news, current affairs, entertainment, all from the internet. This really shaped who I became. Last year, I remembered recalling to a friend that I was never really a homophobe, probably because I grew up watching media that normalized gay people to me and spoke of their struggles. Social media, all of which was very liberal, truly shaped the adult I was becoming. As a young girl who was super angry and frustrated at the impossible sexist world I was about to enter as an adult, I found sort of a safety and comfort when I saw women online calling out sexism in everyday life and the media industry. It made me feel like I wasn't the only one, and I started seeing how social media impacted a cultural change that allowed for us to evolve to a society that would include women and address the issues that we faced. But just like everything else, the novelty of the internet wore off pretty soon. The conversation online shifted very quickly. In the beginning, it seemed like there was an open platform where women were freely allowed to speak about the sexism and discrimination and the bigotry and the harassment we faced. Now, all of a sudden, it was men bitching about how feminism is annoying and ruining everything. This turned me into a cynic. And I just accepted that the world is shit and nobody really cares about women. I soon began to see that all this online activism was heavily performative. It was all about representing a quote-unquote woke persona that aligns with whatever is acceptable in the moment. Everybody is just an advocate now, but it's all superficial and heavily watered down. Where does this bring us now? Well, let's talk about what's really popular at the moment, Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle, if you don't know, is a very famous and successful and revered American comedian. His latest Netflix special called The Closer pissed off a bunch of people online. The main source of criticism was everybody calling him a transphobe, but what was shocking was finding out that many people who were calling him a transphobe hadn't even watched the special. They had only heard that he made a few jokes where trans people were the characters, and boom, that made him a transphobe. To be fair, Dave did come out in his special as a TERF. The term TERF stands for Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminist, a term coined by the trans-inclusive cisgender radical feminist blogger Viv Smith. In the years since the term's conception, Smith has come out and said that she was just looking for a shorthand. She did not intend for the word to become weaponized. I had abandoned online feminism before the term TERF had even come out. So when Chappelle called himself a TERF, I didn't immediately jump on the woke bandwagon and try to cancel him, something that 16-year-old Ruchita would definitely do. I watched his special, and I wasn't really offended by anything. 2 reasons. Number 1, he's a comedian, and all of his previous specials have had the same topics, the same level of shock, pretty much the same opinion. And number 2, I agreed with him. Since college, I had been watching this YouTuber called Blair White. Previously, I avoided watching her because of her right-wing views. I found her very interesting because she's a trans Republican. Who knew those existed? Blair is very staunch against her criticism of feminism, the mainstream trans movement. She believes in the gender binary, and she openly questions and criticizes many trans figures online. The more I watched her, the more I found myself straying away from my hyper-liberal views, specifically everything I had learned online. Before you freak out, I'm still a feminist, and I definitely don't think I'm a conservative. But I think with the generational changes, I've come to find myself at a more central standpoint. I no longer blindly support every new term I learn online about the new sexualities or new gender ideologies. Instead, I recognize how this online feminism really doesn't have my best interest. In 2020, Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling incited a similar response to Chappelle from the internet when she took offense to the phrase people who menstruate. Her argument was that it's erasing women and womanhood for the sake of including trans folks. And again, I find myself agreeing with her. Biological sex is biological sex, that's a fact. But the internet seems to have taken way too much liberty with sex and gender, and it seems to put more of a spotlight on male to female transitioners than actual biological females. I feel like at this point, many of you watching are probably angry at me and calling me a TERF. And I realize that regarding some issues, women and trans women are going to butt heads. That's just how it is. And I also appreciate that everybody's feminism is different. Some exclude trans issues, some include trans issues. Even online feminism is a type of feminism. But consider this, social media has allowed us to have interconnected communication with each other, but we're not really talking to each other. We're talking at each other, just like how we do online. Everything is black and white online. There's no gray area. And it's definitely seeped into our real lives as well. There's no nuance left anymore. I recognize that my age also plays a role in how I participate and consume online activism now. Coupled with my personality and outlook on life, I understand that now there is a new generation of feminists emerging, both in real life and online. And from my perspective, they're way too broad-minded, and that's okay. I'm not interested in arguing with them or getting canceled. I encourage them to go through the same education and journey online, just like I did.